On today's show, we're talking student loans, down payments, and rising interest rates. Stay tuned. What's going on, everybody? Peter Toering here for the Homes Real Estate Podcast. Of course, those of you who don't know, I'm a realtor here with Coldwell Banker here in Macomb, Michigan. And I wanted to talk to you today about kind of a couple of different things. Been reading a lot of articles lately talking about down payments. Should I what to do to save up for a down payment? And I've kind of said, wait a minute, I think we might have this thing a little bit backwards. I know that the conventional wisdom has been to have as much of a down payment as possible. It's been to don't buy unless you can get 20%. You don't want to pay that personal mortgage insurance. And I wanted to just offer a little bit of a different take on that. When we look at saving for a down payment, we look at the wage growth, we look at the rate in which homes prices are going up, we look at the way that interest rates are going up, so the power of your money is going down. You have to look at these things and say, wait a minute, are my wages increasing? So the way that your wage is increasing, or the way that your amount of money that you can save is increasing, might actually be being outpaced by the rising cost of real estate and by the rising interest rates. So even though we have a great economy right now, we have a very, very low unemployment rate, the wage rates have not necessarily outpaced they said some of these additional rising costs. You have to remember, not only do we have like a COLA adjustment, which is 2% for inflation, which this is not taking into account that. We also, they said, have these prices going up. So what do we do now? We've got prices that are going up. Our wages aren't going up. I think the best answer is that you don't wait for that nest egg to be there. There's so many programs now that are allowing you to buy a home with 3.5%, 5% down. And maybe they've got, you might have a zero down program like Rural Development's loan that has a reduced personal mortgage insurance. You got mortgage programs like MISHDA, which are down payment assistance, that you really don't need that 20% anymore. Yes, you are going to pay personal mortgage insurance. That's true. But if you wait, how long are you going to wait? How much is enough that you've had saved up? And how long is that going to take you? And in that time, what are you going to throw away paying rent? I think that's something that we really need to look at. And when you look at these rates, and especially with student loans, I think the biggest, I work a lot with first-time buyers. I work a lot with young folks who are coming out of college. They've got oodles of student loan debt. And one of the biggest things they said is, we have a good job, but I don't have a lot of cash, and I have student loans. And that would be, I think, is the biggest barrier to new out of college folks buying a home. So I think it's something that we need to look at and say, wait a minute, how can we do this? What is it? What is the antidote to this? And I think the biggest thing is these low down payment programs. You can come out your mortgage program, especially if you've been paying your student loans already. Your credit is probably pretty good if you didn't get yourself into too much trouble, because the student loans are not going to affect your credit rate. A lot of these folks have got pretty good jobs coming out, so the income is there. The debt to income ratio is the big thing we got to deal with. So, there are a lot of different programs. There are, and I'm not going to go into it because I've got to be honest, I don't know exactly how some of these work, but there are some where you can consolidate your student loans or reduce payments, things like that. Pick different payment plans that you can keep that debt to income ratio low. But the biggest thing here is that lack of having a lot of cash. Some of these down payment assistance programs or these lower down payment mortgages can really be helpful for somebody that's got a good job but that does not have a ton of cash coming out of school. Or we're seeing too the price of weddings. For those of you who don't know, I'm getting married in this is terrifying, in about 2 months, and the weddings are expensive. A lot of you know this. So the cash isn't necessarily there for a down payment. But don't let that stop you from buying a house. The next thing I wanted to bring up here was the interest rates are going up. And we're going to have a couple of rate hikes here in 2018. And I don't think that we're going to have another time where these are going back down to, if you're waiting for this to go back to 3%, I don't think it's going to happen. So, as we've talked about this before, but the power of your money is going to decrease. So you're going to be sitting here in the same place. Maybe you've been trying to save for a down payment. Maybe save $10,000. Well, maybe that won't be enough because, once we've got these interest rates, well, now our debt to income ratio changes and all this changes. I wouldn't let any of these things stop you from buying a house. The long term, if you look at what is the difference, let's call it a $150,000 house. The difference between you putting 5 and 10% down on a mortgage, it's not that much. We're talking, I'll actually get you the numbers here, but it's not a ton of money between, I always run into people that think, oh, it's going to make this huge difference if I put down 8% versus 5%. And it's like, well, not necessarily. That's not always true. So, we're going to do this. I'm assuming that an $150,000 home price is going to put us at about $1,600, something like that, $1,700. So, if we look at that and we say, well, let's look at the difference from 5% at $1,600 or at 10%, our mortgage is only going down like $100. So saving, taking this extra time, saving up, spending a year or two and throwing away a bunch of money in rent while you're trying to save, to save a couple bucks a month might not be worth doing. And it certainly might be depending on how fast you can save. But there's a couple ways to combat that. Purchase a little bit of a lower priced home, or just kind of take that little bit of a hit every month, or pay extra on your principal. When you'll keep saving that money, pay it down towards your principal. Try and pay that loan off in 25 years, 22 years. So I think those are some really helpful things to look at. I think the big point I'm trying to make here is don't let the student loans or the fear of rising interest rates or the daunting amount of a down payment that you might need, don't let it stop you from home ownership. There's so many programs now that are out there. There's so many options. Work with an agent like myself who works with first-time home buyers, who works with amazing lenders who can get you hooked up, and let's move forward. If it's time for you to buy a house, don't be afraid. Give me a call. My number's right there on the podcast. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on SoundCloud, on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Peter Toering Realtor, which is facebook.com/home in Macomb. Also find me on YouTube, either Peter Toering Realtor's channel or the Homes Real Estate Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We will see you next time. Thanks so much.